Top story today, and more protests across the country are happening over the weekend, and it's all around the use of hotels housing asylum seekers. This comes as Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has promised mass deportations of illegal immigrants if he wins the next general election. Well, let's go to our North of England correspondent, that's Shingi Maurike, who joins us from Liverpool, where one of the protests is due to take place. Tensions rising across the country, Shingi. What's it like in Liverpool?
Well, Leah, you just spoke about the political picture. This is the picture here on the ground in Liverpool. There are hundreds of people in the centre of the city, those anti-immigration protesters, but also counter-protesters gathering in the city amidst what I can describe as the police doing their best to try and get a handle on the situation. We know Merseyside police have put in place a number of enforcement powers to stop and search people, as well as powers to disperse them, but this is what you can see. So there's a few police officers in and amongst the crowd. You can see that sea of flags. That is a demonstration by UKIP, the UK Independence Party, one of the right-wing groups who are against immigration, against those people being placed in asylum hotels. And it's a sea of noise, and those Great Britain flags are also in and amongst, dotted amongst those is a group of counter-protesters. And what is different about this versus some of the protests we've seen centred around hotels is that there isn't a focal point. They are spilling out into the city centre, meaning that we've seen quite a few skirmishes and tussles between the different groups, and we've seen the police having to be quite mobile and quite active. At one point, the right-wing group tried to head into the city centre one way. They are now trying to head into the city centre the other way, but then in and amongst them you have got the left-wing groups as well who are trying to make their voices heard, and I think you can see all of that on our camera. But if I refer back to the right, you can also see the effort that the police are putting in. So here you can see those police vehicles, those vans, those riot vans coming in to help offer support to the police here. Merseyside police doing their best to continue to keep a handle on the situation, which is very much spilling into the city centre, taking hold here in the city centre. And like you were saying there earlier, this has been off the back of a week in which the rhetoric feels like it's ramped up, and there's also been movement in the courts with that decision, that interim order to stop asylum seekers being placed in the hotel in Epping. Perhaps these groups here, these right-wing groups, feel emboldened by that, and they've come out on a march that they say is against, it's a march for mass deportations, and they are here, but then the left-wing groups are trying to preempt them, and in the middle of it are those officers from Merseyside police trying to keep a hand on the situation, which we have seen tussles and we have seen some arrests, and for now they are just about managing. But what this is a picture of some of the tension we're seeing across the country right now in one of the busiest, biggest cities in the country.
Shingi, just clear up for our viewers who are watching this. So the protesters are there, but the counter-protesters are mixed in between, so the police are not keeping them separate.
I'd say that they are trying their best to do that, but what is happening is, at points over the course of the last few minutes and over the last hour or so, is that the groups have tried to move away from one another and move away from the pen that the police had put in place. So when I got here, there was a kind of very obvious police marking in the middle. Now you've got the groups sort of dispersing and trying to approach one another, trying to, in some places we're seeing, get in one another's faces. So I think it's a bit of a complex and increasingly messy situation, if I can use those words. But the police have put in place other powers, so they've got the power to ask people to remove their face coverings. That's a section 60 alpha. They've also put in place dispersal orders. I think they'll be trying to use those powers, but there's policing in practice and there's policing in reality, and I think it's getting a lot more difficult. As you can see behind me, that sea of flags, there's a sea of Union Jacks, which we will always often associate with the right-wing groups, as well as you can see St George's flags there. But then amongst that are also Palestine flags and the flags of various unions and anti-racism marches. So they are in close proximity, and that's proving quite difficult for the police.
This is Dabu7. We have some updated information here in regards to 3i Atlas. Is this thing really a comet, is the question. We have scientists all over the world giving their thoughts on this, and new data is now in. Especially the images from the James Webb Telescope. They're showing that this thing is not off-gassing like a comet normally does. And if you can't tell from the images here, there is no tail on this alleged comet. Now, the information they have put out there already was that they believe that this has some sort of internal light source that's giving off this light. They say that it would have to be over 12 miles long if it was reflecting light. And now, they've used some of their instruments to see exactly what it's off-gassing. And oddly, it's off-gassing a large amount of carbon and not a lot of water and other elements which they expected to see. Water and ice is usually what makes this fuzzy coma around a comet. And then the whole thing's lit up symmetrical with the smaller particles being pushed out the backside, which form the tail. As it gets closer to the sun, it forms an ionized tail. It can have what they call a double tail. But this is missing one. And it's moving faster than anything they've ever seen coming into our area. Now, the path of this has really caught the eye of a lot of people. It follows a retrograde orbit aligned within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane. Super unnatural, has a 0.005 chance of being natural, and it's coming in passing close to Venus at 0.65 AU. Mars at 0.19 AU drops down into the ecliptic plane natural and is on a course like this that's going to skim and barely miss all these planets out of nowhere. Then they released information on Oumuamua, stating that indeed, this thing was not a comet neither. It was an interstellar object, as they're dubbing, and it picked up speed as it took off out of here. Now they say that when Oumuamua took off and picked up the speed, its expected trajectory did not match what they observed. This shows that there was something off about it, and it was long, cylindrical, metallic in nature, and seems to have been intelligently controlled. Now remember, Oumuamua stands for scout, and you send a scout out ahead of the larger military crew. Now all of a sudden we have this larger object coming in, of which we've never seen anything like it. And they do say that this carbon skin around it is pretty much hiding what's in the nucleus. Almost like it's being cloaked to a degree. And the artificial light that they cannot explain also makes this thing stand out big time. So the new images and the new data pointing at this is a Manhattan-sized object heading this way, 130,000 miles an hour. And the path that it takes through the inner solar system is peculiar. How it passes these planets almost in a, as if you're going to drop in to observe it type of manner. You can see right here, as everything goes into motion, you have this drop in, and it's going to come very, very close here to the sun. This is Oumuamua. You can see as it comes out the other side, right there's where it picked up speed. So both objects, very interesting, and they're still releasing data on this, but curiously, NASA and other big space agencies that gathered all this imagery, they waited some time before they even put it out. Is this going to be the new norm? Can't wait till it gets closer so everyday people can start to lock onto this thing and see it for what it is. So they're also saying that the coma around this whole thing is half the size of the sun. So if it came around the sun and it started to actually outgas water or any ice that was in it, if it was a comet, it could explode to as bright as the sun. Of course, it's going to be hiding behind the sun when it gets close enough for us to view it. All these things very odd indeed.
8:50 a.m. on the 7th of July 2005 that suicide bombers set off 3 simultaneous explosions on underground trains near Aldgate, Edgware Road and Russell Square. At Aldgate, the attack happened on a Circle Line train travelling between Liverpool Street and Aldgate, killing 7 people, injuring 171. Another explosion on a Circle Line train leaving Edgware Road killed 6 people and injured 163. Another bomb was detonated on a Piccadilly Line train travelling between King's Cross and Russell Square. 26 people were killed there, 340 were injured. Well, as the tube network was shut down in response to that, people turned to buses to continue their journeys that morning. But at 9:47 a.m, nearly an hour after that first explosion, another bomb went off on the top deck of a number 30 bus at Tavistock Square. That killed another 13 people and injured 110.
Подавление свободы приобретает черты религии наоборот, откровенного сатанизма.